stories and pearls of wisdom by entrepreneurs and business people from all walks of life. This is Shareable with Fan Lynch. Hello, happy podcast people. I hope you are all well and welcome to Shareable. This is the podcast where we have conversations with amazing entrepreneurs who are killing it worldwide, and they share business and entrepreneur insights plus heaps more. Firstly, happy International Women's Day. I hope all the lovely and amazing women out there are having a wonderful day. Today's guest is a very busy gal. Her name is Boom Shikha, and she is a serial entrepreneur, wanderluster, online business owner, yogi, author, and avid meditator. I told you she was busy. Boom runs the Millionaire Hippie, a resource where she shares her rags to riches story and teaches others how to become digital nomad coaches just like her. But in her personal coaching practice, her message is simple. She wants to teach people that building a consistent meditation practice of just 5 minutes a day can absolutely transform their lives. No hours of silent prayer or chanting, no need to shake around magic beads or whatnot, although I'm sure you could if you really wanted to. But Boom believes that just 5 minutes a day can lead your mind, body, and spirit to evolve completely. This conversation was very interesting for many different reasons. Boom and I chat about the unique challenges she faces when trying to coach and teach meditation to others, how popular TM or transcendental meditation apps have been a hindrance or a help in opening up meditation to a wider audience, how her teachings differ from those you see or experience in the popular apps such as Calm and Headspace, even diving into some of the more personal experiences with Boom and her recounting of instances where her meditative practice has moved her to tears and her daily meditation practices and so much more. This conversation was an eye-opener for me in so many ways, and I hope you all find it enlightening as well. First, a couple of small disclaimers. This interview was actually conducted back at the end of last year, 2016, but as far as I know, all the details are still up to date. But make sure you drop Boom a line via her website or social media. All the links and details will, of course, be in the show notes. Boom has been extremely busy. As I said before, in the interim, she has written 4 ebooks and a video course since this podcast was recorded. So again, check out those at the links below, or the links in the show notes, I should say. And if you want to find out more about using mindfulness meditation, which has helped me tremendously in the past personally, you can check out the blog post I wrote on the site called What is Mindfulness? An Entrepreneur's Introduction to Meditation. It can give you a quick overview on what that is, how it helped me, and how it can help you, the modern entrepreneur. And of course, you can find the link in the show notes as well. Excellent. Now, on to our conversation with the charming Boom Shikha. Boom Shikha, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm so grateful for this.
Yes, and we are very grateful to have you here as one of the first lot of the people we're interviewing for the Shareable program. Now, I've discussed sort of what you do in the entrepreneurial space in the intro. But what I'd like to ask all of our interviewees that we get on the show for the Shareable podcast is if you because we're entrepreneurs, we wear so many different hats and we have so many different skill sets. We generally always find that it is hard to sort of describe what we do without trying to sound more like an elevator pitch. So what I ask our guests is basically imagine you're at a networking event and you'd like to sort of explain a bit more in detail what you do as like an entrepreneur, because I like to hear it from their perspective and how they like to put out what they're doing, and basically I think it allows them to give them a little bit more of a in-depth insight, and also lets us know exactly where they're sort of aligned as far as their skill sets are concerned. So imagine, if you will, you're meeting me for the first time. How would you best sort of describe yourself and what you do?
Definitely. So what I do online, there's so many different aspects to my online business, but a couple of different things that I definitely want to focus on are I'm a meditation coach. And it's interesting because a lot of people say that you can't really teach meditation. I totally agree. Meditation is all about the practice. It's about sitting down consistently every single day in silence or stillness. But what I do is I ensure that you guys are able to be accountable for that practice. So I sit down with you sometimes. I do guided meditations. I am basically your accountability partner. I ensure that you sit down every day and actually do the practice. And interestingly enough, people have a lot of questions about meditation. It's not a really complex practice, but I find that things that are very simple are also really hard to do. There's so many different aspects to it. So I also have a lot of tips and tricks and questions that I answer about that. More than that, though, I actually do a lot of coaching based on mindset and personal development. So a lot of people come to me and they see my website and they see all the things I'm doing online. And they're like, I want to do the same thing as you. I want to maybe build a business online, or I want to start my meditation practice, or there's so many different things. And so I help people. I coach them through the process and I help them create their own business based on their passions, or start a practice, consistent practice based on whatever they want to do, build a great habit into their lifestyle. There's so many other things that I can speak about. But these are the two things that I would say that my business is completely based on. I want to help people. My vision or mission statement would be, I want to help people live their level 10 life in any shape or form, whatever it looks like. And so that's what I tell people when they come to my website or they come for coaching. This is what I want for you.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful, and I think it really falls in. I mean, just this sort of, even when I was just speaking to you just before on Skype, before we queued up the call, your general demeanor in everything you do has this very lovely air of positivity and sort of I think just a feeling of personal growth, and I think that's a really important thing that a lot of entrepreneurs leave out, is the fact that they're all sort of hunkered down in the analytics side and actually doing things and growth of the business. But as far as the growth of the individual, or your instrument, as I like to say, yourself, that's kind of your most important product, because if that's not working internally or externally, then it obviously diminishes your end product of whatever you're trying to create. So I find what you're doing is very, very good and very admirable. I do find it, though, interesting that people, when you say you teach meditation, and then you might have detractors saying that, oh, well, you can't teach meditation. Are these people who are in the sort of meditative space themselves, or are these sort of just I guess, onlookers, and they don't really know too much about the meditative practice? Because I would argue that, yeah, you can teach meditation, and it is, like you said, if it's a skill you need to cultivate over time, that is something that you can do consistently over and over again. And as you get better, you can learn different skills. Do you find that it is something that you can teach, but it's because there's no sort of hardwired intrinsic value, it's hard to sort of quantify? Or do you have your own sort of ideology in regards to that?
I totally love the way you've actually said that. The reason I say that I can't actually teach meditation is because the practice itself is about sitting down every single day, and I can't teach someone to be consistent. So that's the reason I say I can't teach you how to meditate. I can definitely teach you the basics of it. You can sit down. I'll tell you what the techniques are going to be, what you can say in your mind. But for you to actually sit down every single day and do the practice, I cannot make you do that.
Right.
It has to come from the inside out, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
But the practice itself, there's so many different things that I can tell you about, things that I've actually experienced myself in my 7 years of meditation. So it's such an intricate and complex practice when it comes down to it. I mean, I've had sessions when I've started crying uncontrollably, and I'm like, what is going on here? Why am I so emotional all of a sudden? And if I had someone to tell me, obviously meditation makes you cry because a lot of emotions come up, then I would feel better about that. And that's what I want to do for other people. I want to make sure that when all these random things happen during your practice, you don't freak out. You know exactly why they're happening.
Absolutely. And yeah, I would love to get a bit more into the nuts and bolts of meditation, because it is something that we're finding out through the advent of sort of entrepreneurship and sort of this stuff becoming in vogue and people becoming more involved in the movement from working for themselves. But we're finding that a lot of top performers and people who work at these ridiculously high rates of output, 9 times out of 10, or even I'd say 99% of them, have a meditative practice. Myself, I also have a meditative practice. It's not very good. Again, it's that consistency. And I think from your perspective, it's not so much of sort of calling them up on the phone or nagging them saying, have you done your meditation today? Have you done your meditation today? Et cetera, until they just sort of, they meditate into submission, which, yeah. But I think from your perspective as a coach, it's more sort of helping them understand the why, because, you can it's with teaching anyone anything. You can tell them till you're blue in the face what the benefits are, and and that they should do it. But until they truly understand why they should do it themselves, and then they get a bit of proof is in the pudding by putting that into practice. I think that's the biggest challenge, as any coach would probably attest to. It's basically getting someone to believe in what they're telling them, and again, that's done through several different methodologies. Again, depending on what they're trying to teach. But I think if for you, that would be your part of your biggest challenge, if I'm not mistaken.
I absolutely agree. It's about future proofing it, kind of showing them what the future self looks like if they kept on meditating consistently. Showing them, if they are interested in location independence as their ideal lifestyle, then showing them if they kept on meditating, they'd be able to get all these amazing ideas into their head. They'd be able to use whole brain thinking because of meditation, and then showing them that they'd be able to create that lifestyle for them because of this practice that they started 4 years ago or a year ago, whatever it might be. So it is about showing them what is possible in the realm of meditation. I sometimes feel like I'm a little bit crazy about meditation. I'm so passionate about it that I think that it solves every problem on this planet.
Yeah.
But truly, if you go back to the research, it's such a fascinating practice. It changes every single aspect of your life. I mean, it changes your brain structure. It changes your brain chemistry. It changes your body structure, your body chemistry. I mean, there's nothing that it doesn't touch. So I totally think that it's one of those practices that if you just started and you did consistently, even 5 minutes a day, it could absolutely change the realm of possibilities for you.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree as well. And whether I have experienced those things or not is besides the point. The fact of the matter is there are so many strong advocates for it out there, and it comes from I find it comes from a very internal spiritual place, as opposed to, say, something like a religion, which is, I think that's internal as well, but there is an external factor, as in everyone has that one shared belief. But I feel in meditation, everyone goes through the process differently, and there's no sort of quote unquote one correct way of doing it. And I think the benefits are obviously multiple in their basically, like you said, in the physical, in the mental, and the spiritual. But Boom, I have to ask you, with meditation as a practice in general, there is a bit of a stigma around it as it being a bit woo woo and a bit a bit funny, and again misrepresentation in the media, and sort of through this, like the 60s and 70s, and again, unfortunately, as there is in any industry, and it may seem like an unfair comparison, but the charlatans in sort of the meditation practice who claim they can give you all these sorts of insights and life goals and things like that you can achieve within like a day because of their practices, but coincidentally you need to pay them $10,000 to do it. So again, like that happens in the entrepreneurial space, earn 6 figures in like 2 hours with my course, or this, you know what I mean? Just all this sort of stuff. So do you find that stigma has somewhat alleviated now that meditation, things like transcendental meditation and things are coming more into the mainstream, or do you feel that it is something that you find that you're sort of consistently having to battle against, even in 2016?
It's funny that you say that. I feel like there's 2 separate groups of people. One of them obviously are the spiritual people. They're the creatives. They're the ones who believe that this world is magical and it's not just this physical world that we occupy in. The people who believe in the quantum leap or quantum physics. Everything is energy, all of that stuff. And then there's another group of people who are really logical, really rational, sensing individuals. And they believe that this is the physical world that we live in, and that is all. There's nothing else to this. I'm going to die, and that's all. This is all that I have to do. And so they don't want to waste their time sitting down to meditate over a practice that's just not going to serve them, because this is the only life they're going to live.
Right.
So there's definitely 2 streams of consciousness. And what I do is that I try to use science for the people who are logical and rational.
That's clever.
For the people who are spiritual, they obviously, it's easy to convince them because they already believe. But the people who are logical and rational, they need the logics of science to convince them. So I use, research studies. I'll show them research studies that actually prove that, your brain structure changes because of meditation. Your brain chemistry changes. Whole thinking happens. They've done MRIs, they've done fMRIs. All of the technology that we have, they've actually done so much study on the brains of people who meditate, the Buddhist monks from Tibet. And it's astonishing the way their brains are completely different from someone who's in the Western world, So just to show them the research, you can't deny science, in their opinion at least. I mean, in my opinion, sometimes science can be manipulated. But for them, looking at all of these fMRI studies and the images, and they're like, okay, my God, I had no idea.
Yeah,
So for
absolutely.
them, I definitely do use science, although there is a lot of dissension still, I have to say.
One technique I've actually used to, not to convince my more sort of logical, so all my friends who are like engineers and, coders and stuff like that, they're kind of more based in the science and like, well, unless I can read like a peer-reviewed journal that this says, claims blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, that's completely understandable. And normally you'd be right, but it's a reasonably low cost investment. It's only maybe 5, 10, 15 minutes a day of just sitting there in silence, being aware of time, essentially, not really thinking about any one thing. So if you can do this practice consistently for a few weeks, and it literally costs you nothing but a few minutes of your time, but it potentially can unlock all these benefits, wouldn't you? I would argue to you wouldn't that be worthwhile sort of maybe even trying out or pursuing? And that's kind of pulled a lot of them around, that when you put them like that, they go, well, yeah, I guess, like if it's only a few minutes of my time and, I can give it a shot. And if all of these people agree that it is something that has changed their life or like has a transformative effect, it has allowed some of them to come around. Whether they've actually continued the practice is another point altogether, but at least they've given it a shot and they've gone, I've tried it and I can understand it would be beneficial for some people. It's just not for me. And to them, I just say, well, maybe you should just try harder. But they're my friends. I can tell them that. But otherwise, I think with even the biggest skeptics, you could just say, look, it is a very low cost investment because it's free. It is pretty much just a donation of your time every day, and the benefits are enormous. So why wouldn't you? It's not like you have to cough up money every single time you have to sit down and empty your mind, essentially. So I find that that's quite an effective way to bring the skeptics around, basically. But I do feel that stigma is going to take a while to get away, and I mean, people like yourself obviously are doing a service to the practice, and I think more people like yourself will come out and be advocates of the practice and in the right way, as opposed to obviously profiteering and basically letting people know that this is a legitimate practice you can do every day that will change your life for the better. But you just have to believe it, sort of build it, and it'll come, but in a more internal sense, I guess. So
totally.
Your journey getting here. So at the moment you run the millionairehippie.com. Again, at the risk of sounding like your therapist, let's go back to your childhood or the start, and basically, where did you feel that you were getting in touch with? I mean, and this can be either your entrepreneurial spirit at a young age, or something to do with more in line with meditation, or something to do in line with personal coaching. Where did the sort of light bulb turn on and the switches start clicking over, and you're going, hey, maybe this is something that I want to do for the rest of my life, or this is my life passion to pursue?
That's such a great question, and it's not therapist-like at all. I feel like everyone should go back to their childhood and figure out, what am I doing? What are my cues? Why am I doing the things I'm doing? Try to figure all of it out. And for me, the main thing happened when I was 23. Like, I think that's when the light bulb switched on, like you said, where I realized that I had this amazing job at the government. It was great benefits. I got paid really well. And I was sitting down and I thought to myself, this is what I'm going to be doing for the next 40 years until I retire.
Yeah.
And that kind of thought it just scared me so much, because I realized that I could not do this for the next 40 years. I would literally die on the inside. My soul would extinguish. I mean, I couldn't do it. And so I started reading a lot of books. I started figuring out, what can I do for the next 40 years? Or the next 10 years even. I mean, I couldn't even imagine doing this for the next 10 years. It was that, not boring, but it was just not fulfilling enough. It just didn't speak to my heart. And I looked at my life, and I was doing all this yoga, and I was doing the meditation on the side, and I was doing all of these different things on the side, and I loved doing it. I would do it even if I wasn't getting paid for it, which I wasn't at the time. And I realized to myself, I'm like, why can't I get paid for these things? And it took me 10 years to get to the point where I started, building my business and building my practice and believing in myself enough that I can get paid for this, because I believe that mindset has to switch as well. So many of us have passions, but we think, oh, no one's ever going to pay me for it. And I say to those people, yes, they will. You'll be surprised what people pay for and what people buy online. So seriously, please try. But it took me 10 years to get to this point. It took me 10 years to figure out how to make it happen. It took me 10 years for the internet to mature enough that there's so many softwares here right now for me to use that my business is just so easy to create. it took me 10 years to get to a point where, like I said, I believed in myself enough that I have something to offer to this world. There's so many days when I'm sitting down, I'm thinking to myself, why would anyone listen to me? I feel like an imposter. Even though I have meditated for a while, why would anyone care? There are others who have meditated for 20 years, longer than me. They should be the ones teaching meditation. So there's so many things that come up, and they've had so many things come up. I've read so much. I've met so many amazing people. But the thing that keeps on bringing me back to this business, brings me back to meditation and to entrepreneurship, is the fact that I want to live my life the way I want to live it. I want to set it up the way I like to do things. I want to get up in the morning and do a podcast with a random person from, across the world. Just every single day. I want to, create content. I want to help people meditate. I want to help people build this practice that can absolutely change their life. Even if I help one person, it's going to make everything so much better. And so the passion I feel for this business, the passion that I feel for meditation is, unparalleled to anything else that I've done. And so as soon as I realized that fact, like I said, it took me a while to get to this point. But the last 10 years has been a journey to this point, I believe. Everything that I've done, the traveling, the meeting people, looking at all the different people who are living lives that I want to live, has brought me to this point that I am living my life, the life that I want to live. And I know that I can do this for the next 20, 30 years, and I won't be bored. I will feel fulfilled.
Yeah, absolutely. Boom, you've raised some really interesting points, and it goes deep into the psyche of every entrepreneur, and at least everyone I've spoken to, especially on this particular podcast, is that when you were working your sort of 9-to-5 job, and you said, this is what I'm going to do for and again, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's a thought process or something that's maybe sort of beaten into the American working psyche, at least, is that with that government job and the benefits and the security of that job, people would normally say, oh, I could get to this job for 40 years. Like, isn't that great? But you kind of turned it around and go, oh, I get to be here for 40 years. Isn't that great? Like, you know what I mean? So what people would normally see is like, this is amazing. I got benefits paid out and, 401k and insurance and all that sort of stuff that, which in Australia, we take that stuff for granted. We get a lot of that stuff sort of as a given with a lot of our jobs. But I have a lot of American friends come over and they go, I can't believe all the benefits you guys get is like your basics. I'm like, yeah, I know, it's pretty crazy. But in the US, especially with government jobs and things like that, it's that job security. But you turned it around and said, no, this isn't this. I mean, that for me is like almost like a life sentence, basically, which isn't really necessarily a bad way to look at it. It's just basically saying you are not destined for that kind of work for the remainder of your life. Maybe it's something as like a transition to moonlighting, to doing what you're doing now. And I think it is wise to figure that out sooner rather than later, obviously, because then you can really take time to follow your true passions. And in this case, obviously, it's meditative practice and teaching others the benefits and the way of that. But another thing you mentioned that was quite interesting is the imposter syndrome thing. And this is something that I think a lot of pretty much everyone goes through at some point, even just starting off as like a freelancer and kind of going, who would ever want to pay for my work, et cetera, et cetera. What do I know? And what you've said previously is something that comes up pretty much every single time is like, I've barely been doing it for long enough, but there have been people who've been doing it for much longer than me. They should be teaching it. Is there any sort of mindset or thought process or emotions you had to reconcile to get over that particular imposter syndrome going, who am I to teach anyone anything? Or was it something that you just found that you gradually built up your confidence through as you reached out and kept going and to reach your goal of becoming a true entrepreneur?
There's one thing that I did that I recommend everyone who feels this way do. What I did was I spoke to successful entrepreneurs who are at the top of their game. So people who I know are doing extremely well. They're well known. They're making 6-7 figures in their business. And I spoke to them and asked them, do you feel this way? Do you feel like you're an imposter sometimes? Do you feel like, even though you're such a success, do you wonder why people are listening to you? And do you sometimes feel like, you should just give it all up because no one's going to bother with you anyways? And the funny thing is that, Cam, every single person I spoke to said this, yes, they still feel like an imposter and they still wonder why anyone's listening to them.
Yes.
I mean, these are people who are making 7 figures in their business. They're well known in this world.
Yeah, authorities, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And they still feel like, they're surprised that people actually listen to them. So I realized from those conversations that I'm never going to get over this imposter syndrome. It's just something that's ingrained in all of us. We're just, disbelieve in our capacity, or maybe it's just that, it keeps us humble. Maybe it's actually a good thing. But just because I feel like an imposter doesn't mean anything. People are actually listening to me online. It is happening. And so if I don't ever get over it, it doesn't matter, because I'm just going to keep on plugging at it. Even if no one on this planet is listening to me, I'm still going to do this because this is what I'm meant to do. This is my life purpose.
That's beautiful, and you're 100% correct. And it is funny that you've spoken to those people who seem to be at the top of their game, and they actually are, and they concede that, yeah, I do feel like an imposter, and it's similar to when you get those comedians or musicians or performers who go out and perform in front of like thousands of people in these packed out arenas, and then you think, wow, they must have all the confidence in the world, but in interviews they usually go, no, I'm really nervous when I go out, because I want to give the best performance I can. If I don't do that, then I feel I've failed my audience. So like you said, it can keep you humble, absolutely, but I think moreover it's a healthy thing, because you never get too full of yourself, number one, but number two, you're always striving to create a better product for your audience, and you're not sort of resting on your laurels going, I've made it, I've arrived, they can go buy my back catalog and I'll sleep off the residuals or whatever, you know what I mean? So I think it is a healthy thing to have, number one, to keep your feet on the ground, but number two, to always be serving your audience. And something I like to tell people when they say to me, I've got, who am I to be telling anyone this, that, or the other? And I've got a very close friend of mine I'm trying to push to get into for him to do his own photography, like set up his own photography agency or studio or whatever, because at the moment he's working for someone else. He does really good work. He's a really nice guy, and he's got a great knack for explaining processes to people, and they're really receptive to it. And I said, how about you go out on your own? And he goes, who am I to blah, 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 et cetera, et cetera. And I said to him, look, the fact of the matter is, yeah, you may not be as knowledgeable as some of the other photographers out there, but you're willing to help. And if you come from a place of, I am here to try to help you get the best out of your photos, or I'm here to try to help you take better photos of your children or your family or whatever. And as long as you come from that place of, I'm just here to help, you have nothing to fear at all, because why would you feel fraudulent if you're just trying to help people? And then when people are receptive to that and go, I really like what you said in that article or that advice, and they go, well, if you enjoyed that, I actually have a service, if you're willing to do something a bit more customized, and just work it in from there. And if they say no, then that's fine. You can still consume my free content or whatever. But people get all hung up and they go, am I being professional enough? Am I providing enough help? And this, that, and the other. But as long as your heart's in the place of, I want an audience to serve and I want to help them, and even if they never buy any of my products for the rest of my life, this is what I'm going to do, much like yourself. You will be a lifelong advocate of meditation because you've seen how the practice has transformed yourself and others. And then to me, that way, no one has anything to fear whatsoever.
I totally agree. That's a brilliant way to put it. I love that, actually. Yeah. And I feel for your friend. I mean, I was there too, so I totally agree.
Yeah. So, I mean, hopefully he'll come around eventually.
Right.
So we've touched on your in your practice, obviously there was a bit of a stigma around meditation, but did you find anything else that would be sort of the largest challenges in the type of business you do, whether it be sort of being able to put things into action with your clients, scaling, or any other challenges that you find that over time is either diminished or something that is sort of a day-to-day thing that you're still sort of struggling against?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I actually struggle with, especially with meditation. One of the things that people have a really hard time with is the fact that they're so busy. And I totally get that. I mean, I am busy as well. Everyone is. We have a limited amount of time. And if they want to choose between meditation and something else, they always end up choosing something else, obviously. If I'm going to choose between spending time with my friends or family and doing a 15-minute meditation, a lot of times I'm going to end up choosing my friends and family. So I have to really kind of strategize and make sure that I explain to them how to incorporate meditation into their lifestyle without it affecting anything else that they're doing. Because it's not really important to them right now. They don't realize the benefit of it. They don't realize the impact it's going to have on their life. Once they start doing it regularly and they see the benefit, I mean, I don't have to convince them anymore. They'll just do it automatically. But to get them to that point, it takes a little bit of finagling on my part, figuring out, okay, are you a morning person? Can you get up in the morning and do a 5-minute session as soon as you wake up? Can you do this while you're sitting in the car waiting for the traffic light to change? Things like that. So I have to kind of manipulate the situation to ensure that they have the time for the 5-minute meditation session even. The second thing that people always kind of are apparent, about, they always say that I have an app on my phone. I have two apps on my phone. I have Calm, I have Headspace. I mean, I have all the apps. I don't actually really need your help. The funny thing is that they've downloaded the app, but they've never actually opened it.
Yes.
They've never actually used
Yep.
it. So I tell them, I have apps on my phone that I'm supposed to be using, but I've never used. So the app doesn't really matter. It's the fact that I'm here face to face with you. I'm someone you trust, and I can help create accountability in your life so you actually do the practice.
Absolutely.
So those are the two things I kind of struggle with.
Yeah, it is funny, and I've mentioned this to a lot of people these days. We still call it a phone, but how many applications on your phone can you actually use to make a call? It's like 1 out of 100 basically. So I'm trying to change it to smart device, because generally we use it for texting and messaging and for social media and all this other stuff, and we seldom make calls on it. But that's just a personal thing of mine. As for things like Headspace and Calm and the other apps, which I think are good in a way, because they are popularizing and bringing to the forefront meditation as a daily practice you should be doing, and I think it's getting positive press for meditation, and sort of getting away from the stigma of the whole sort of woo-woo thing, and you need to be in a sort of weird like pseudo cult to sort of get any benefit. But the funny thing about Headspace is I've used it once or twice, and it does actually have the day counter on it. So if people, for you, it's a good thing. They go, oh yeah, I use Headspace all the time. It's like, well, how many days are you up to? And they're like, I have not even opened it yet. So so that's kind of a funny thing to keep them accountable that way. But I think from your perspective, Boom, is it's actually apps like those, which might seem detrimental to what you're doing, I think actually can be beneficial for your cause, because as I was explaining, or as I was discussing with another interview previously about the commoditization of products that we use or consume, especially with freelancers. So what Calm and Headspace have kind of done or tried to do is they've tried to commoditize meditation.
Right.
So they've basically made it something that you can sort of buy and sell, and whoever creates the best product or the highest bidder or the lowest bidder gets the most sales. Whereas for you, in your practice, the Millionaire Hippie, you can create a customized solution which is specific to their needs and their issues and what they want to achieve in their life, and therefore makes it rare and therefore valuable. So you are no longer a commodity, you are now a rare piece of information, or basically a guide and an accountability partner. And like you said, you can set notifications and reminders, but 9 times out of 10 most people just ignore those anyway. Mm-hmm. and the poor app just gets put by the wayside, and you end up deleting it for space later on because you need to download more photos of your cat. So I think in your perspective, it is a good thing. Do you find that you can sort of segue yourself and your services in via that way, or do you find that people do you find you get a bit of traction back saying, oh, I've got these apps, that's all I need, I don't need like a coach to help me with these sort of things? Or do you find people do actually end up using the apps and they are helpful, but down the line they will need something a bit more specific to their needs?
So there's two things that people usually need help for, even though they have the apps. First of all, like you said, most people ignore the notifications. That's just what we are. We have so much information overload that we can't ignore them. So they need an accountability partner, and that's something that I'm always there for. I actually am, thinking about creating a club called the Meditation Club, where I can actually have people connected to each other, accountable to each other, and making sure that each of them meditate daily, more like in the evening or in the morning. But the other thing about meditation is that there's so much emotion and fear and stuff that comes up while you're meditating, and a lot of people get confused. Like I said, they just don't know what's going on. They feel like they're going crazy. There's so much. There's a lot of stuff on the inside that we've been ignoring for so long. We never sit in silence ever. There's always music going on. And so you've never actually seen what's inside of you. And when it actually bubbles up, from your consciousness, from your subconscious, you're confused by it at first. And so that's where I come in. I've been through all that stuff. I've had all that stuff come up, and I've dealt with it, And so I explain to you how you can deal with it, how you can let it go so it doesn't come up over and over again. Or what is it telling you? What kind of messages is it sending you? So that's where I come in as well. Because the app will obviously, and I love the apps. I'm not berating them at all. They're awesome. Like I said, they actually help people. Some of them actually do use it. But I'm there so I can kind of clarify the nuances to it. Why am I crying when I meditate? What am I feeling right now? Why is my hand tingling? Why does my third eye start, twitching? Things like that.
Right, right. No, that's excellent. And yeah, I think that from a very high level perspective, the apps are a great introduction to the meditative practices, especially sort of transcendental meditation. But I think if you want to get further into the deep dive and yeah, the explanation beyond that. So these sensations that I'm feeling, or these emotions that I'm feeling that I'm now having to reconcile because they were either suppressed or I didn't even know they existed. Who can I speak to about that? And then that becomes so deeply personal that most people aren't really willing or able to speak to a company about that sort of stuff. So they kind of want someone who's a friendly face, who understands their problems and understands what they're going through in their life. And I think that's a beautiful and perfect way for the coaches or the people who are there to help mentor them with their meditation to slot in and take over. Because once that they've hit that critical mass of emotional discharge, as it were, then again they just simply don't know how to deal with it. So I think that's a really good way for you to inject yourself into that for sure. With your business, is there obviously you have a very strong focus around meditation, as we've spoken at length during this interview. I've mentioned transcendental meditation, or TM for short, which seems to be in vogue at the moment. But is there a particular practice that you practice, and or do you do a number of different practices? And is there one you would recommend for beginners that's the most acceptable, or not acceptable, but the most accessible, I should say? But so basically, if I'm a beginner and I want to dip my toe into meditative practice, where would I start, and how would that practice differ from what you're up to today with your 10 plus years of experience?
So for me, like I said, I wake up every morning, I sit up wherever I am, and I sit in silence for 30 minutes. So that kind of practice, I think, is something that comes over time. People dislike silence. They don't like it. They want music. They want noise. They don't want to be in silence with themselves because they sometimes, unfortunately, hate themselves. And I'm so sorry to say this, but most people do not like themselves enough to spend time with themselves.
That is so true.
So it'll
take
absolutely. Time. Yeah, sorry, unfortunately. But eventually you will get to that.
Yeah, hopefully.
Hopefully, yes, please. If you meditate, though, I feel like self-love is a big, big part of meditation. But for a beginner, I would absolutely recommend that you do some sort of guided meditation, some sort of place where you can go in and listen to a person and help them guide you through the process. Obviously, Calm and Headspace have guided meditations online through YouTube. There are certain trancey music styles that you can listen to. There's also breath work that you can do. But I absolutely recommend that if you are a beginner, you start off with some sort of guided meditation, just because there's no silence, so you don't have to worry about that. And if you don't like being on your own by yourself, then you have someone with you. You feel like there's someone guiding you and helping you through the process. And the second thing, beyond a beginner, if you've been doing it for a few months, breathing and following your breath is actually a really, really great practice, because most of us don't know how to breathe properly.
No, we don't. It's staggering, actually.
It's crazy. I mean, we've been doing it since we were born, probably years, decades, but we have no idea how to control it, no idea how to use it to our benefit. And so if you can kind of use your breath in order to manipulate your body and your structure, you can actually use your breath to control your emotion. If you're feeling fear, you can use deep breathing to turn that fear into excitement. If you're feeling anxious, then you can use deep breathing to calm your nervous system. So that's definitely the second thing I recommend for beginners, because those two kind of practices will completely transform, like I said, your brain structure and your body structure.
Yeah, excellent. And the breathing I can attest to as well. I do the Wim Hof breathing method. And for those of you who aren't familiar with him, if you Google him, WIMHOF, Wim Hof, he's a multi Guinness Book of World Records holder for basically his practices are like cold immersion. So I think he's like climbed Mount Everest in nothing but a pair of shorts, and his breathing technique. Yeah, his breathing technique has allowed him to maintain sort of body temperatures. It's allowed him to stave off infection. He's broken multiple world records, mostly his own, for being submerged in ice. He's an amazing man, and he's got a breathing practice which people have said is very similar to I'm not sure on the pronunciation, but Tummo or Tummo, Tummo, which is I think a yoga breathing technique. But yeah, again, he kind of his meditative practice says, how you focus on the breath and focus on, because it's autonomic, I think people don't really put too much focus into it. They just think, well, it's going to happen anyway, so why do I need to think about it? But it is strange. Once you actually start thinking about the things that happen automatically, you get a really different perspective on it. And then you think, well, if it works so well when I'm not doing anything to it, imagine if I focused on it and actually used it to my advantage. Like, how powerful would it be then? So it is quite funny how people can transform their lives. And the good thing that Wim does is he actually teaches other people how to do it. He says, I'm not special in any way, shape, or form. He's got students who do the same thing. They climb up giant icy mountains in Switzerland or wherever he's located in nothing but a pair of boxer shorts and a singlet, and they're perfectly fine. So it is quite amazing what he's doing. And again, that's part meditation and part breathing, and it's definitely a mindset thing as well. And that's just the power of what you can do from the physical side. And you did touch on something, and we had a bit of a laugh about it, but we laugh because it's unfortunate that the fact that people don't like being alone, and I think, this is what I think, but I just wanted to know your take on it. Do you feel that if they're alone for too long, that they have to be with that level of neuroses or self-loathing, or the fact that they're scared of what they might discover if they're alone for too long? Because normally, if you're by yourself, you go on your smart device, and if you're sitting there in silence, you want a friend notification to pop up, or so you want a retweet to pop up, or something annoying to throw you off your task and take you off your true course. And I think, like, now that we live in this sort of distraction economy, that silence does sort of get to people more often than not. But do you feel, in your experience, that people are scared of what they might discover about themselves if they are alone, which is obviously goes back onto fear of the unknown, which us as a species are very well versed in, unfortunately?
I love the way you put it, the fact that, they're afraid of what might come up. One of the main things that I found in a lot of my coaching clients, when they tell me why they're afraid to be alone, is because they're afraid that they're not actually living their life to their full, purpose, their full potential. Right. And if they're in silence, they'll figure that out, and they'll realize that they're basically just wasting their time on this planet. And that is one of, for human being, we're meant to create. We're creators. We're innovators. We want to build. We want to grow. And exactly. And once they figure out that they're not, if they're in silence, they'll instantly know that. You'll know if you're not spending your time properly. And for them, that's the biggest fear. They don't want to figure that out. They want to distract themselves. They want to numb themselves using alcohol, drugs, whatever. And as soon as they sit down in silence, they're like, oh shit, I'm actually not living the way I'm supposed to be living. I'm not using my talent. I'm not doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And that really scares people. That really does scare people.
So do they, I guess it comes to a point where they are alone with nothing but their thoughts. They don't have enough quote unquote distractions or pretending to be busy to push all those unreconciled emotions under the rug, going, I'm not living my life stream, but whatever. I've got emails to answer and whatever, all that sort of busy work that they like to think is productive, which we all know that is just, a bit of a self-taught lie. And I think from that perspective, it could be a case of, and that's where people get very emotional. And I don't know, feel free to elaborate on it if you like, but otherwise, if it's too personal, I completely understand. But at that moment when you were meditating and you burst into tears because you were moved by your emotional state, was that anything in particular as far as a breakthrough of something that was plaguing you previously emotionally, or was it something more to do with a celebration and understanding your purpose, or where did that sort of emotional state come from?
That's such a great question, Cam. You always ask the best questions. So,
I try.
The first time I cried was a while back. It was a few years back, the first time I started meditating. And yes, that was definitely me realizing that I dislike where I am. I dislike myself. I have body image issues. I am doing a horrible job of living on this planet. I'm not living authentically. I'm not living my true life. I'm hiding parts of myself from everyone around me and myself because I believe that I shouldn't be showing off my authentic self to people because it's just so vibrant and amazing, and I was just so afraid of it. So yes, definitely the first time I cried, I was just amazed by how much I was hiding, how many masks I was wearing, and how sad I felt about that, But the more time that passes by, and I'm so grateful that I've been practicing for so long, I am at this point right now that I love myself as I am, and I'm just so grateful to be alive, and I'm so grateful that I'm here on this planet as I am, the way I am, with all of my quirks and uniqueness and imperfection. Yeah. And so when I cry now, it's because I am just so grateful, and just tears of joy. And I know that probably sounds woo-woo to people. They're like, what's wrong with you? But it really, I sit down to practice, and I just feel gratitude bubbling up from inside of me, and I just feel so happy to be alive, and I feel so grateful, and I feel so much love, not only for myself, but for this entire planet and every being on this planet, no matter who they are, no matter what animal it is. I just feel love. And that's what meditation is all about. It's about love.
Yeah,
And love for yourself, love for this planet, love for, the beings around you. And that's the reason, the Dalai Lama says if everyone meditated on this planet, there would be no war. There would be no need for it. There would be no need for mental hospitals. There would be no need for jails, because everyone would be living their fulfilled lives. They'd be happy. They'd be loving. There'd be no need to murder anyone, or no need to do drugs, no need to drink alcohol, no need to numb yourself.
Absolutely. And I do think it is a case of the meditative practice can help you sort out the stuff that you're not too sure on, emotionally or spiritually, or I guess in the sort of in the mental states and things, maybe things that have happened in your past that you have sort of again brushed under the carpet, or things that you aren't addressing. And those unaddressed emotions or emotional states can really manifest themselves as, aggressive behaviors or self-destructive behaviors. And of course, like, that's the thing, like whoever starts a war, they don't really have all their stuff, their act together.
Yes.
Either the person who's starting the war or the person who's basically instigating the act to force someone else to defend themselves to start a war. Mm-hmm. It's just like, I don't think you've got all your stuff sorted out. I think you need to just take 5 and, breathe a bit and think in silence and things like that. But obviously the Dalai Lama's got a great point, and it's a very simplistic view of it. But when you really break it down, you think, well, if these people who have these aggressive or these destructive behaviors or emotional states, they are really just hiding. Like they do this as a way of without having to deal with what their true self, essentially. And they either, again, are too busy, or they don't have the time, or they don't see the value in it. And therefore, that's why we have these, horrible things happen around the world. But on the flip side, you're able to see the beauty in everything through your meditative practice, despite at the start being upset that you, A, weren't living the life that you felt you could, and B, didn't feel you were afforded the capacity to do so because of, society or family or whatever it was basically in the past. But through meditative practice, you've been able to reconcile that, and obviously the effect's been transformative, and you've wanted to help other people, and the proof is in the pudding. I can't say that. I can't stress that enough. So definitely, totally. That's such a important point. I'm really glad you brought that up. Just with back onto business, the business side of thing, I generally like to ask, like, if anyone has like a business hack or a program or a course they've taken that's really helped sort of revolutionize their business, or has really sort of paid dividends sort of times 10 or 10x or whatever. And I remember at the beginning when I asked you your journey to getting here, and you said you read some books when you were just doing a government job. Do you mind elaborating on what sort of literature you read? And is that something that you feel was the biggest sort of business hack for you in your business, or is there anything else? I mean, most people say, I wish it was like a sexy program that I use or something like that, but 9 times out of 10, well, especially with the people I've interviewed before, it is kind of more like a mindset or a personal thing or an ideology. So I would love to hear from you as to what's helped you in your business thus far.
I would totally say that, obviously mindset was changed by reading books, but I think books are absolutely amazing. You can get into someone else's head. Absolutely successful people who you would never be able to talk to directly, but you can actually figure out how they think and learn from them. A couple of books that I would recommend absolutely for the listeners is obviously, and I think this is one that's really typical, The 4-Hour Workweek by Timothy Ferriss.
Yes.
He's absolutely brilliant. But the second one, and I love this man, Stephen Pressfield.
Yes.
The War of Art.
War of Art.
Oh my God, I have this book by my side in my bag all the time. He is absolutely brilliant.
Yes.
I mean, I can't stress that enough.
I'm so glad you brought up those 2 books. I mean, and it is funny that, Tim Ferriss's 4-hour series are amazing. He is a force of nature in and of himself. But Steve Pressfield, even Seth Godin said, he's like, when War of Art came out, he's like, why didn't I know this book came out? And, why didn't anyone tell me? It is that good. And then Seth actually contacted him to do a book called Do the Work, I think, that they collaborated on, which is also very, very good. And Steve Pressfield actually released his the sequel to that book, which I think you could download for free actually. It's I think it's got an expletive in the title, so I don't want to mention it on air, but it'll be in the show notes. And I'll see if I can link up the free link to that. But I implore the audiences to definitely the War of Art is essential reading for anyone. So those two obviously were instrumental in where you are now. Are there any other books or anything else that you would say that has led you in the direction you are now?
I absolutely would say that one hack, I believe it's a hack, I think that's something that I do every single day, is batching the work. And so what I do with my time, because there's so many different things that I need to do on a daily basis, what I do is I batch, schedule, and put a timer on. So basically how I do it is that I have to, create a bunch of content for the week. I have to create a bunch of podcasts for the week. I have to create a bunch of videos for the week. What I do is that I set up each day for each task. So Mondays are for podcasts, Tuesdays are for videos. And I'll set up a timer on a 2-hour schedule. So I'll set up a timer for 2 hours. I'll batch them. So I'll do 4 or 5 or 6 different podcasts at once. I'll record them. I'll set them up. I'll have them ready to go. And I'll schedule them out to go, one at a time, maybe every few days.
Right.
Same thing with videos. I'll do a couple of them, or I'll do 3 or 4 of them at once, because I'll get in the groove of it. I'll have all these ideas flowing. And so I'll batch them. And again, I'll schedule them out, and I'll schedule them to go based on a timer.
So drip feed sort of thing.
Yeah, I find that to be so fascinating and so useful, because it's so easy to get distracted in this world. I mean, Facebook is always there, email is always there, my phone notifications. And so if I batch them and if I put a timer on, I'm not distracted. I'm doing that task for those 2 hours. I'm not checking my phone. I'm not doing anything else. And I'm able to get so much more work done that way. So I totally recommend that for someone who, someone like us, entrepreneurs who are trying to do a lot of work but are having a hard time getting the work done.
Do you use any specific software or anything to drip feed out the content once it's created, or do you just use whatever's on the platform and just sort of schedule them to drop out that way?
I use MeetEdgar to schedule out all of my posts, all my podcasts, to all my different social media networks. I find that to be extremely useful, because MeetEdgar is actually like a library of all of your resources. So it kind of recycles all your content over time. So you don't have to do it yourself. You have such great content from 2 years ago, but you forget that you actually have it.
MeetEdgar's good. It repurposes the content from that you've posted previously that you've enjoyed, and it saves you having to create your own sort of library. But I think the only thing that I think stops people from basically jumping in to use it as it is a paid subscription service. Is that correct? I don't think they do a free account at the moment.
It is $49 a month. Yeah, so it is a little bit pricey, but I found it. If you're looking into starting a business and you're new to it, obviously I wouldn't recommend that you do use that. There are other free services like Buffer or things like that you can use, or you can just schedule out on your own. I mean, for YouTube, I don't actually schedule out. I don't use MeetEdgar. I schedule it out on the service itself, on YouTube itself.
Yes.
So you can use their own services. I totally agree.
Yeah, I find if you're not everywhere, like some people love being on every single channel, and I've been a bit advocate of you should be where your audience is, and that's not necessarily everywhere, or you should be on the channels which you are most receptive to. So we had a quick conversation on Facebook about Periscope and Facebook Live and things like that as well, and again, if that's where your audience is and that's your best way to communicate with them, or you can put your best foot forward doing that, then yeah, those are the places you should be. But a lot of people feel they need to be on every single channel, which I think is just it's too much for one person. If you have a team, then that's fine, but obviously you have to work up to that. And obviously I'm a big advocate of Hootsuite. I'm a Hootsuite ambassador, and I'll put it in the show notes. You can actually sign up to their main plan for 30 days for free. So if anyone wants to jump onto that as well, they can have a trial of that too. So, but otherwise, MeetEdgar is very good as well. I just want to quickly have one question before we wrap up. If you could go back and talk to your 18-year-old self, what would be the best piece of advice that you would give her? Now, this could be a life advice. It could be business advice. It could be anything. If you just had one chance to sort of appear as a ghost ghostly version of yourself without scaring the bejesus out of yourself, and then giving yourself problems later down the line because of the cycle of time. I could say this is the one thing you need to keep in mind for X. What would it be?
My 18-year-old self, I would say, do not go to university and waste your time. I'm sorry to say this. I know there are lots of people who are in school right now and they're loving it, and I loved it as well, but I thought, if I look back, I think it's an absolute waste of time. You can actually do practical experience. You can actually build your business. You can do whatever you need to do practically. Obviously, if you're becoming a doctor, go to university.
Yes.
But if you want to be an entrepreneur, like I've always wanted to be, my dad's an entrepreneur, like the bug is in me. I don't understand why I ever went to university. It was a big waste of money. It's a big waste of time. I learned a few things for sure. I made a few friends, but if I had just, gone out and done some practical work, worked in someone's business or just gotten down and gritty into it, I think it would have been a much better use of my time and money rather than going to university. I tell everyone I meet, younger people who come to me for coaching, that if you're absolutely sure you want to go to university, do it. But if you're not, take 2 or 3 years off. Don't worry about the time. The time will pass no matter what. Just take the time off, do what you need to do to figure out what you want to do with your life, really. Because eventually you'll really figure out that, university is useless. It's just a piece of paper. I've never even used my bachelor's degree ever in anything I've done. So I'd absolutely recommend my 18-year-old to skip everything. Go and do your own thing. So yeah,
yes.
I know it might come up as a shock to a lot of people. I'm sorry to say it, but it's just the truth for me.
And again, any of the other interviews that if anyone's listened to on the Shareable on this program, they pretty much all the entrepreneurs echo your sentiment. Boom. They pretty much say, at least for them, if you want something a bit more of a formalized qualification, such as a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer of some kind, then yeah, university is the place to be. But and I think you surmised it beautifully. Unless you are 100% know exactly what you want to do, which I think a lot of people don't. I think it's just it's just the done thing that you go to college after high school and then you get your degree, you get your piece of paper, you get a job, you buy a house, you settle down, et cetera, et cetera. But I think with entrepreneurs, we're like, well, why? Who says who? You know what I mean? So I think, again, for yourself, you would go back in time and say, for you, young Boom, yes, do not waste time with college. But for other people, it might be good. But again, I think it's like you have to be very passionate about what you're doing at college for you to get the experience. But sadly, especially with a lot of these any sort of electronic or coding disciplines, by the time they've graduated, a lot of the stuff they've learned is actually irrelevant. Like it's been sort of phased out because of updates and the speed of technology. So it's and then they're left with this massive student debt, at least in the US. In Australia, we've got a slightly different system where the government sort of absorbs it and it's like a loan, but they're not really that hard on you to pay it back that quickly, which is I think something they're looking to change very soon. But at the same time, it's just like, well, if you're not really into it and you don't know what you want to do, then just take your time and maybe you can go visit college at another time if you're really into it. But otherwise, I think there's so many different opportunities out there. So yes, some very, very sound advice there. Just before we go, I'd just like to extend the invitation for you to let people know where they can find out more about you. If there's any websites or social media in particular you would like to throw out to our audience where they can keep up to date with what you're doing.
Thank you for this opportunity, Cam. I'm so grateful to talk to the listeners. If you guys are interested, you can obviously go to my website, themillionairehippie.com. And I also do have a Facebook group, The Millionaire Hippie, so you can find me at whatsyourfreedomnumber.com. And again,
Excellent.
Thank you so much for listening, and I'm so grateful for everything.
Yeah, not a problem. And well, of course, naturally, we'll have all of those links in the show notes so you can find Boom at your leisure. She's a serial entrepreneur, wanderluster, online business owner, yogi, author, and avid meditator, interested in helping you find your life purpose and get to your level 10 life. Boom Shikha, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Cam. Have an amazing day.
I shall. Thank you so much. And to everyone out there in podcast land, this is Cam H. Lynch signing off. And until next time, we'll see you then. Bye-bye.